Hello world, welcome to the Benita Show. We have an exciting night of guests lined up for you. We have right now Wyatt, and Gayle Gallagher, the producers of Shadowland, which is in all the stores now, so we'll get you a copy. So tell us a little bit about, you were in LA for about 15 years, huh?
About 18 years. Yeah.
18.
I went out there in 1988 and stayed out there till 2006. And I went out there at a time when there wasn't really digital filmmaking and there wasn't really that much independent film. So back in 1988, there wasn't really, there was commercial production in St. Louis, there was a lot of television production, but they weren't making films in St. Louis. So if you wanted to be in the film industry, you were going to New York, going to Los Angeles. So I went out to LA and did acting and special effects and then tried to get into directing my own film. But then as the digital stuff started to take over and evolve, I realized, you know what, I don't have to be in LA anymore to do this. So financing became available back in St. Louis, and I could not get out of LA fast enough.
Right.
As soon as the financing became available in St. Louis, I pretty much packed my stuff and came home. And I haven't looked back since. It's been 5 years since I came back, and we've made a feature film and a bunch of short films and commercial productions and music videos, and I've gotten more done in the last 5 years than I did in the previous 15.
Wow.
Yeah, in LA.
Because you have mastered the digital production. I see a lot of your work, and I tell you, you have just mastered that.
Thank you.
And you went to Webster University, and I'm going there now for working on my second master's in drama. So and you did a lot of time in schooling in preparation for what you're doing.
Yeah, but I have to admit that if I had that to do over again, I'd do it a little differently. I liked Webster, and I thought Webster was a good school, but I think back then I was more of the mind that you have to go to school and you have to have an education. But working out in Los Angeles, in the trenches, I mean, the first 6 months in LA and actually being on big sets, I learned more than I ever did in film school. If I had film school to do over again, I wouldn't mess around. Webster's a good school, but I don't think Webster's designed to put you into feature filmmaking. I would have headed for like UCLA or NY Film School. I would have gone for one of the big top 3 or 4 film schools.
Yeah, I know you did a ton in communications, and from reading your bio.
Yeah.
You did a lot of stuff in.
Well, I went to Webster also, but when I started there, my focus was to get into audio production. I was working in radio at the time, and just because I was getting kind of a general communications degree, I started taking video classes too, and ended up just falling in love with that. And I felt
from looking at you.
So I've got kind of both the audio and the video side of things going.
I like to call it an illness.
It's
an illness. It's an obsession. It's an illness. It's self-destructive. It's damaging to your health. It's not good for your relationships. It taxes your pocketbook. It's like crack cocaine.
Yeah.
It's hard. Yeah.
Gotta have it, right?
Yeah. It's an illness. It's crazy.
And other people who have it understand that.
Yeah,
We've got support groups.
We need to. Yeah, we need to get together and talk about this illness, because I spend hours on the computer myself editing, and you fall in love with it because you're in control. You're driving nobody talk back to you when you're editing. Nobody.
If they do, you cut them out.
I like that. You sure do. Now tell me about your Brainstorm. Is that what the radio broadcast?
Oh yeah,
did?
that was a public radio program.
And I saw the title, and I was like, I wonder what that was about.
That was it was for public radio, and they touted themselves as kind of the car talk for the science world.
Because you created that, right?
I was the producer of the show, but actually the 2 hosts of the show were really the creators of it, and it was a couple of professors at UMR Rolla. And because I was working at the public radio station down there.
I don't think I knew this about her.
See, I like that.
That's really geeky.
Thank you.
So what did you guys talk about? I'm just curious now, and then we're gonna talk about some film stuff. But
wow, honestly, it's been a while, and I don't really remember a lot of the topics. I know there was one that sticks with me. They were talking about soaps and surfactants, and the fact that I remember that word, it must have meant the show worked, because that stuck with me. But
Fahrenheit versus Celsius.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So we know the whole goal of that show is to kind of take science and put a fun spin on it. So I think the publicity photos of these guys were taken in a hot tub with a couple of hot chicks. So
really?
That was they were wearing their lab coats though, so it was all good.
Funny. That's pretty good. That was ingenious. That's pretty creative. Now, Star Trek. You worked on Star Trek when you were in LA. 1 and 2, right? The Next Generation. You worked on that.
I worked on Next Generation and Voyager.
He acted in.
Next Generation was an acting bit, and I'm not in the credits, but it was a really nice, what they call a featured bit. There's like lead role, supporting role, one-liner, and then featured, and everybody else is just an extra. But I'm in a half a dozen scenes. It was a 3rd season episode called The High Ground. And I'm a security officer who's like personal security for the woman who was like the guest star that week. So every scene she's in, I'm there as her bodyguard. So there's a lot of scenes standing around looking dramatic in your uniform, but I got to beam in, I got to fire a phaser, I got to do all kinds of cool stuff.
Did that make you nauseous? That whole beaming in thing?
No,
No.
That stems from listening to a conversation between some of the actors there on the set, and Jonathan Frakes, who played Riker. He was talking about he'd just been at a convention and a fan had seriously asked him if it felt better to materialize or dematerialize. So the Star Trek actors, they were aware of how geeky Trek fans could be, and they appreciated the fandom, and they also knew where to draw the line and which one of the fans were a little.
I would have been like, okay.
And then a couple years later, I worked on the special effects for Star Trek Voyager, the pilot episode. There were a bunch of miniatures that needed to be built. So I got to work both sides of that one. And I got to be on all the sets. I got to visit the set of Next Generation. I have these great Next Generation photos because we were shooting on a whole different set. So the USS Enterprise sets were open, but nobody was on them. So my buddy Ted came to the stage that day to visit me, and we went over and we crawled all around the Enterprise sets. And I have photos of me on the bridge and all over. We just went everywhere and photographed anything.
You're gonna have to. You have those photos?
I have those photos.
You're gonna have to send them to me so I can put it.
I have those photos. I'm in the transporter room. I'm in the engineering section. I'm in the bridge.
Now, why? Tell me, how did it feel to fly that spaceship?
I didn't get to fly no spaceship.
I'm being the geeky.
But then I got to visit all the sets. I got to visit
the
DS9 set. I got to visit the Voyager set. I got to visit the Enterprise set. So the sets kept getting smaller. Like as the series were like a little smaller and not quite as successful as the last one. So like Star Trek Next Generation was huge and took up like 2 or 3 different sound stages, and Enterprise was like one sound stage, and the bridge was like half the size of the bridge on the Next Generation. You could tell they just
keep hiring smaller actors?
Well, they just, little less money each time, smaller set each time. So,
I would have thought it was because of the digital development that they need as much space, but no.
No, I think they just
downsized.
Yeah. But by the time they got to Enterprise, the geeks out there will love this. They got so good at what they were doing. The Enterprise bridge set was literally like 8 pieces of a pie, and everything was on wheels, and everything locked. So you could literally pop this pie section out and shoot this way, and pop that section back in and pop this one out. And they really,
so it was a full circular set?
Yeah, it was a full circular set. Like Next Generation, you had to like unscrew stuff from the floor and get a pry bar, and grips had to like drag it to the side. By the time you got to Enterprise, like 10 years later, it was like push the lever, the piece elevated, you unlocked the things, you rolled the section out. It was genius by the time they got to the last part of it.
Yeah, smooth sailing. So now, let's talk about what's going on today.
Sure.
Shadowland.
Yeah.
I tell you, I have it over there on my shelf.
Okay.
I'm a big fan. I got my picture. You see my picture, world? I got my Shadowland poster up. But anyway, that is a cool film, and I love the wings. I love the angel, the winged vampire.
The vampire wings.
I thought it was too cool. I was like, I hadn't seen that. So tell us about Shadowland. Give us a little bit of background, how you thought about developing that. And
we kind of tripped backwards into Shadowland. That's the weird thing about it. When I got the chance to do a low-budget film, the discussion of doing a low-budget film and having the money came first. It wasn't like I was shopping this script around called Shadowland. I had a whole other script in mind that I wanted to do that I thought was a good first project. And for legal reasons, because that project was developed with another company, I couldn't do that script. So in the fall of 2006, money's in place. The executive producer, Bob Clark, has said, go, make a film. And I can't use the script that I wanted to use. So suddenly, like November 1st, I'm sitting down to a blank piece of paper to start on a whole new project. And I had other scripts that I'd written, but big multi-million-dollar, Bruce Willis destroys the world kind of
Okay,
scripts,
okay.
which obviously I wasn't going to be able to make. So I'd had this idea about this, mysterious woman crawling up out of a hole in the ground,
Okay.
and what is she? Who is she? Where did she come from? Why is she there? What's this beautiful woman doing in the hole in the ground to begin with? And I started writing this script based on that idea. And I didn't want to do a vampire film. I thought the world's got enough low-budget, cheesy vampire films. It doesn't need another one. But I tried. Is she an angel? Is she a demon? Is
She's
she
been reincarnated.
What is she? And none of the questions got answered nearly as well, except for when I put in vampire. And every time I dropped in vampire, it all came together. So then we made the decision that if we're going to do a vampire film, let's do it seriously. Let's treat it with some respect, even though it's a low-budget film. And something we get praise for and we get criticism for is that because it's a low-budget film, it's a horror film, we didn't go hardcore with the nudity and the graphic violence
Buckets of blood.
and the exploitation. And we could have. So there are some people who say, oh, it would have been a much better film if your lead actress had gotten naked, and this film is useless.
At what part?
Oh, it wouldn't have mattered. I mean, to a certain...
At some place she needs to be naked.
To a film-going audience, all she needed to do was just get naked. She could have walked
beautiful, too. She's gorgeous.
And she was willing to do it. I think she was ultimately glad that we didn't do it. And honestly, the film didn't need it. If we had gotten her naked, you would have said, oh man, she's getting naked just to be getting naked.
Yeah.
And some people would have been offended by that.
And you see films like that too. Oh, you got a shirt off?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, what's the purpose of you take your shirt off right now?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Well, we did that with Carlos, though. The vampire. He got to take his shirt off.
He got to take his shirt off.
Yeah, but there's
fair play. The
there
girls
was
get
a
to see Carlos with
practical
his
reason,
shirt.
though. He had to
Had to sprout his wings.
He had to sprout his wings, and it was easier to do with the shirt off.
That's right.
It's hard to break the wings to the shirt.
With
So
the shirt.
But that was bonus. It was good. To have
Yeah,
Carlos
so-
with his shirt.